Hey, what is up, everyone? So, with Sea of Thieves Season 15 finally releasing, I feel like we now can talk about, was this a good Hunter's Call update, or did it miss the mark? Obviously, there's certain features that haven't released yet, and I'm excited for those to come out, and we will kind of go over what is left to come out based off what we can see from the content update video that released for Season 15. There might be stuff that they didn't show off in that could be coming still. However, I think it's safe to say that the main things that they want us to focus on like what season 15 is about, is what we know from what they said. So I'm not going to be holding out hope that there's some kind of big, amazing, special update that's going to come out that we haven't seen so far. If that happens, we'll definitely talk about it. But for this video, I'm just going to go off of what we know. So there are certain things that if you watched my video from a year ago where we didn't even know that the Hunter's Call update was coming out, I had talked about that we need a Hunter's Call update in the game. And some of the stuff that I talked about in there, like fishing voyages, Hunter's Call emissary, expanded levels, we got that last week with season 15. And that's all great. But I feel like those were the easy answers. Those were kind of no-brainers. Like, they were easy to get done in the sense that, like, you didn't really have to change the mechanics. Obviously, you had to create the Hunter's Call emissary table, but the emissary system already existed in the game, so that wasn't anything new. Fishing obviously wasn't anything new. We even had fishing voyages in the past, and that's kind of what I referenced in that video from a year ago. We've had the Festival of Fishing before, where we had these fishing voyages. Now, the fishing voyages that we got last week are a little bit different, but essentially, they just tweaked what already existed. The really main new thing from last week was the ancient megalodons, which are okay, but I feel like wasn't really hitting the mark in terms of what we wanted from a Hunter's Call update, at least for me personally. So let's go over everything we know about the Hunter's Call update for Season 15 of Sea of Thieves. So obviously I just talked about the emissary and the expanded levels for the trading company, the 2 new ancient megalodons, and a fishing voyage. That's what we currently have. But we also know about some other things that are coming out later on throughout the season, like the hunting spear, meg hunting voyages, wild boars, and ambient life. Now, some of the ambient life I'm really excited for, such as like the birds flying next to you, and I really like the look of the jellyfish, but we need to make sure that we're clear on this. That is not stuff to do. Those are not activities. I talked in a video a couple months back about how we look at content and need to kind of separate that between features versus activities. And I would say the ambient life is more of a feature in the sense that, like, it's not something that you can go and do. You can't go and just, you know, find jellyfish and then do something with them. It's just there. It just exists, and it's something pretty to look at. I think ambient life is great in the game. I'm very excited for all this stuff, but it's not a new activity to do. In terms of new activities, we have fishing voyages, which is basically just the same fishing mechanic that we've had for years. I like the implementation of them, but it is basically an old activity with some new coat of paint. It's nothing new. The other thing that we have is the ancient megalodons, which is somewhat new. It's more new than the fishing voyages, I would say, but it is based off the same meg mechanic. So that's not really, changing up the game and really expanding upon the Hunter's Call. Meg hunting voyages are the exact same thing as the fishing voyages. We've had the megas in the game. These are just going to be the normal megs, as you can see from the trailer. And essentially, you're just going to be finding them with the voyage. It's basically just a raid voyage, but for megalodons. Just like how we got raid voyages for the skeleton forts and stuff. We never said that those raid voyages were new activities. They just gave you a new way to do the same thing that we already were doing. Really, the only brand new activity to do in the game for the Hunter's Call is with these wild boars that we saw, where they're going to be on the island with like treasure and stuff. That is really the only thing that I'm holding out hope for to be really great. But even if that's fantastic, I don't think that's enough to call this a successful Hunter's Call expansion update. The other thing that we haven't talked about, which I don't view as an activity, but I do view as a feature, which is the hunting spear. I don't really hold up that much hope for it. I kind of view it as something similar to the trident that we got with, season 3 of Sea of Thieves, where that is useful in certain moments. It's really great for the Cyan treasuries, but you're not going to be like using it all the time. If you find it, you might pick it up and then you might use it on an enemy or two, but you're likely not going to be carrying it around all the time with you. You're not going to be picking it up and like taking a bunch of them on your ship and then using them all the time. I think it's more of a gimmick thing in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong about that. I would love to be able to have a hunting spear that, you throw it at the Megalodon and it does significant damage, but I just don't really see it being that big of a thing. I think people are gonna kind of use it for a little bit and then, just like the Trident, maybe only pick it up when it's convenient. So if you take that, that is our Hunter's Call update that we're getting from Sea of Thieves. And in my opinion, it's just not good enough. I think the Hunter's Call has exponential potential. Tons of things you could do with it. I've talked about some ideas in the past, and in this video, I'm going to talk about even more ideas, expanding upon what we talked about before, adding some more stuff to it. And I'm sure, you all brilliant people in the comments, I'm sure y'all have tons of ideas of what you'd like to see from the Hunter's Call. Even if you're not the biggest Hunter's Call fan, I'm sure there's features that would go along with the Hunter's Call that you would still enjoy. And I think if we start pushing away from just fishing and Megalodons, we could really make the Hunter's Call a amazing faction. Probably everyone's favorite faction. If they really did a good job with this, then it would be great. Last thing I'll say about the current update that we have for Hunter's Call before I move into some of the ideas is it really does feel like they just are recycling content and putting some new paint on it. None of the stuff outside the wild boars feels that new to me. The ancient megalodons, the meg hunting voyages, and the fishing voyages, even the emissaries, are all just stuff we've already had. It's just recycled content in my opinion, and I'm not impressed. Maybe I'm a harsh critic, but that's just my honest opinion as someone that's been playing the game since day one. We've had the Hunter's Call in the game for a long time, and they really deserved a great update, an amazing update. Season 15 should have been a slam dunk victory for them, especially after the last, 6, 7 seasons that haven't been so great. This should have been the update that brings everyone back to the game, and I just don't see it right now. With that said, let's get into some of my ideas, and some of this, if you've watched my previous videos on the Hunter's Call, you've probably heard me talk about some of them, but I wanted to make a video that kind of covered everything so you didn't have to watch, videos from years ago to hear all my different ideas. So first, and the biggest feature of a Hunter's Call update that I would want to see is a monster hunting campaign. So basically when I'm saying this, I kind of want it to be almost very lore focused and have a bit of progression. So my thought is basically you would work with Merrick or some other person from the Hunter's Call, and you'd be basically getting missions from them. And these missions would be replayable. So basically you'd start off with like some smaller monsters. We'd start off with say like a Megalodon, and then you have to find a couple Megalodons first, and then once you've say defeated maybe 3, maybe 5 Megalodons, you get to move up and hunt down maybe a Kraken. We'll get like kind of the ones that have been in the game for a while out of the way. And then you would move on to even bigger monsters that have been added to the game. So this would be stuff like, say, a giant crab monster that you have to fight, or a giant sea serpent. And basically, you would have like these kind of like lore-focused motivation to progress through the Hunter's Call ranks as being able to basically tackle any monster that fights you. I think you could tell a really cool narrative with all these monsters that are spawning into the game and spawning into the world, and you're being tasked with helping the hunters fight off all these monsters that have been causing mayhem in the seas. That could be really interesting, and that could be expanded upon even further outside of like the initial Hunter's Call update that we're talking about. But even if it was just a handful of new monsters like a crab monster, a sea serpent, some other ones, that would be really great. And that would be, I think, replayable. You could basically, once you unlock it, you just, could go back and replay it. It would just be like the voyages that we have currently in the game where you go to the quest table and you do a hunt for a giant crab, a hunt for a sea serpent, a hunt for Megalodon, a hunt for a Kraken, basically all those different things. You basically have different hunting voyages that are for them once you unlock them through the campaign narrative. So in my opinion, that would be the big thing. Just like how the ancient megalodons were for rare, their big update for the Hunter's Call, this would be my version of like the big thing for this update. But there would be other things that I would put into this. So we have the fishing voyages, but that's kind of an old mechanic. What I would like to see is a new type of fishing, like crab hunting or crab fishing, where I've talked about it before, but you'd basically have like different crab crates that you have on your ship, and you just go sail to like some kind of open water area, and you throw the crates over the side of the ship, and you'd have like ropes hanging, and then you have to monitor all your different ropes. And you see like when it starts getting pulled, you'll see it kind of going up and down, getting pulled and stuff underwater. And then you have to go and try to pull it up. And maybe there's like some resistance. Maybe you pull in some of the mechanics that we have from fishing already, and you kind of retool those to have like some resistance, and you have to kind of fight them up and that kind of stuff. But I think that would be really cool, especially if I could do it where like I'm sailing my ship and I have the crab crates on the side of the ship and I'm just monitoring them as I sail, and I could like go and pick them up out of the crate as I'm, sailing and stuff, instead of like fishing where it feels like I have to stop and do that. This could be something that I could do while I'm traveling different places. I think that would be really interesting, and I think it would be a nice peaceful activity outside of fighting monsters and stuff. But the Hunter's Call is not just, fighting monsters or fishing and that kind of stuff. There's also cooking that's an aspect which, with the current update that Sea of Thieves has for the Hunter's Call, they have not talked about cooking at all, which I think is a little strange. What I would like to see is expanding the cooking to basically have kind of like a cooking pot on your ship, similar to, if you remember, the Monkey Island first Tall Tale, where you had like that pot where you had to get the different items and put them in the pot, and then it made the little potion that you needed to used for the Tall Tale. It'd be kind of similar to that, a little bit better, and maybe more of like a mixing station instead of just grab the thing and put it in there. My thought with that is, inside our pirate log or somewhere, you'd be able to see a recipe book, and it would tell you different locations in the Sea of Thieves world to be able to go get different ingredients, and that would let you cook certain types of food in the game. So let's say, for example, you have like a spicy pork. So you have to go and kill a pig at one of the islands, and those pigs can be found across most of the Sea of Thieves world. So you go and kill the pig, you get the pig meat, and then you have to go, say, to the Devil's Roar, and you have to find like spicy peppers in there. And you take the spicy pepper, and then you mix it with the meat inside your cooking pot on your ship, and then that creates the spicy pork. And then when you eat that, that makes you move a little bit faster for a short duration. You could do that for tons of different things, but what I would really want to see is you make the ingredients specific to different parts of the Sea of Thieves world. So maybe some ingredients would be locked to the Sunken Kingdom, so you have to swim down to the Siren Shrines or Siren Treasuries and have to go to like the coral and stuff and like pull some ingredients out of there. You'd have to go to the wilds and go get stuff from there. Maybe you have to go inside caves. There would be like ingredients that are only found in caves. There's tons of things you could do with it, but I think that would make it so that you are exploring the world more and just really touching all parts of Sea of Thieves and making all the different places in the game feel more unique from each other. I also think they kind of already are doing this in some ways. So we have the merfruit that was added with Season 14, which I feel like is kind of that first step, kind of what I was already talking about, like having food that has special abilities. So when you cook the merfruit, it gives you the ability to temporarily make the mermaid disappear. I think the recipes could be something that expands upon that. I think that would be really interesting to see. Next up, this is one of the newer ideas, and this I think would be really interesting and kind of similar to a feature we already have in the game, but it would be slightly different. This would be the Hunter's Market. And what this would be is you go to a sea post or the Hunter's Call representative at an outpost, and you'd be able to see basically a market price for different types of animals that you can go and hunt. So you'd have, say, like the boars on there, you'd have fish on there, different types of fish. You'd have crabs on there, you'd have like megalodons, you have krakens, you have basically all the different monsters in there. Basically anything that you can hunt in the game would be on this list. In each real world day, those prices would change. So you'd have things that are more valuable to get on certain days compared to other things. This would kind of reflect how food markets work in real life, where you have certain foods that are priced differently depending on the day. And I think that would be really cool, because then you could go to that board and say, oh, boars are very high priced today. Let me go and start hunting some boars and bring those back and sell them today. And then, the next day you get on Sea of Thieves, you see, oh, megalodons are really big. Let me go on a meg hunting voyage and get some meg meat to sell. And I think that would make the game feel a bit more dynamic. And we kind of have a feature like that currently. What I'm talking about is slightly different, but it's similar in concept, which is with the trade routes that we have for the merchants, where you can basically have the different crates, and each outpost is one to like different types of crates compared to other ones. So you have to kind of buy crates in one area at a low price and sell somewhere else and sell them at a high price. It's kind of like that, but it's slightly different. I think you could make it so that if you wanted to do it more similar to that, where maybe say certain outposts in different regions are wanting certain types of hunter's call meat. So you could have, say, a plunder outpost, they're really craving megalodon meat, or at Galleon's Grave outpost, they're really craving crab meat. Stuff like that. That could be another way to implement this. My first suggestion was something that was a little bit more simplistic and easier for players to do. But if you wanted something that was a little bit more like, sell high at certain locations, that's another way to do it. But I really think that would make the Hunter's Call a little bit more interesting and just having a little bit more motivation to go and explore different parts of these hunting type voyages. This next idea is somewhat related to the Hunter's Call, but you could kind of view it as just a world expansion for the game in general. And this is a whirlpool. So we have stuff like storms in the game. We have volcanoes that will have volcanic explosions and that kind of stuff. We have fog in the game. And this would just be another environmental thing that could happen in the game, where you have this giant whirlpool that would happen, and then your ship kind of gets stuck and starts spinning inside there. Imagine having like ship battles in there where you have like two ships going in, fighting each other, just like in Pirates of the Caribbean, and you have to basically adjust your ship in a certain way that you can sail out of it. And maybe if you land in the middle, maybe it spits you out and shoots you maybe it shoots you in the air, maybe it shoots you in a direction, who knows. But I think a whirlpool would be a cool addition. I'd be interested to see how Rare could do something like that in the game and kind of expand upon what we already have with, say, like the fog or the storms and that kind of stuff. Next up, I also am really excited about this ambient life in the game. I know it has no gameplay impact in the sense of, there's nothing that you can really do with them, but I do think it's going to make the game feel more lively. I'm really excited for the birds that are going to be flying by our ship and stuff, and just seeing animals and stuff when we go onto islands that, you don't have to interact with, but, you can just see them, and it makes the game feel more alive. I'm really excited about that. But there was one other animal that I think would be really cool to see in the game as like an ambient life, and that's dolphins. Imagine if you're just sailing in the deep ocean, because I think the birds flying by your ship are probably going to be when you're near islands. Imagine if you're in like the deep ocean area and you could see dolphins that are just swimming by you and just kind of, skipping and over the water like how they swim usually. It would just liven up the world more. Obviously has no gameplay impact, but it would be really cool, especially if you're trying to like go board a ship or something and you're swimming next to some dolphins. That would just be a really amazing experience in my mind. This next idea does have more gameplay impact, and it'd be adding sea turtles to the game. And my thought with that is, while the sea turtles could just act as ambient life, where you can just kind of look at them and they're cool and they're pretty and stuff, maybe they can make little nests on the shore and stuff, and maybe that could have treasure. But the real thing I was thinking about is, what if you could hunt the sea turtles, and then if you killed the sea turtle, you would be able to take their shell as a piece of armor. So you could either sell the shell, or you'd be able to wear it, and then if you wear it, you'd have like a certain amount of durability, and maybe you could take like one or two pistol shots and without taking damage, and then it would break. I think that would be a cool like little gameplay mechanic where you'd be looking for these sea turtle shells that you could put on, or you could go ahead and sell them. And it would be kind of similar to how the Hunter's Call already has the ability to have stuff like when you cook food, you get a little bit of regen health, which gives you a very significant PvP advantage when you're fighting. So this would be kind of going along those lines of using the Hunter's Call to influence PvP. Finally, the last idea that I had with the Hunter's Call is maybe expanding like the coral reefs in the game and having like rare treasure that you could find in them. So you'd be able to like go to different places, maybe you'd see like something shining in the water and you'd swim down to it and you'd be able to view this like coral reef. You maybe have some more ambient sea life in there, like seahorses and stuff. And then you'd be able to find like different little treasure that's hidden there, maybe like some pearls from clams and stuff or other things like that. I really think there's a ton that could be done with the Hunter's Call, and it just really requires being a little bit creative and putting some effort into it. I'm not trying to say anything bad about what Sea of Thieves has released for the Hunter's Call. I think the boars look really cool. Like I've said a couple times in this video, I'm really excited for the ambient life that's going to be added. And I actually do really like the ancient megalodons. I think they're fun to fight. But I think the Hunter's Call deserves more, and I think there's tons of potential with this faction that I think many people would enjoy having in the game. So that's all I have for this video. Let me know in the comments below which of these ideas was your favorite and what else would you add to this list of what you'd like to see added for the Hunter's Call in the future. That's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed, it'd be great if you like and subscribed. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye, y'all.